All right, so this is obviously then also the final roundtable for this year. And then we continue with the series in the next year, of course. Okay, then we can have a look at our agenda for today, which is quite packed. Which you will see, yes. We have quite some updates from the CAP team. One is an update of the status flows. We talked about this, but there are new updates. Also in Node.js presented by Sebastian. Then Daniel will talk about declarative constraints. Steffen will continue to talk about the famous topic of data integration. Still quite new to the CAP family, we have the CAP console, and Jennifer will talk about this. And we'll finish for today with the presentations from Simon, and there are enhancements as well to the Kyma deployment and the attachment plugin. So quite some content, and nevertheless we try to ensure, as always, that we have enough time at the end of the meeting for your questions, for your concerns, requirements, whatsoever. So also a reminder to all the speakers, please try to stick to your timing. Otherwise, the Q&A slot at the end will be shortened. So that's already it from my side, and then I hand over to Birgit for some more explanations.
Right, yeah, let me do a bit of housekeeping stuff. Just a notice for everyone, this customer roundtable is open to internals, but also to external audience, so please keep that in mind. Then, as we sometimes get questions around that one, we are recording that session, but we are not recording the Q&A part, just to give you the option to, speak up openly. We'll share the recording and the slides later on. You might have seen that we have a blog post announcing that roundtable, so we will share it there, and we will also share on our events page. And Sebastian already mentioned we have quite some time for Q&A in the end. You can always address your questions in the chat, and as we are not that large round, if you have something very urgent, perhaps you can also address that during the demo, but we have enough time for Q&A in the end. Right, then most of you probably know that one. So we have our customer influence tool. If you have any new requirements, important, this is for requirements, not for bugs, then you can enter it in that tool, and there is a voting possibility, and those requirements that get a certain number of votes, we will check those and then can come back to you and discuss that. Right, and with that, I'm already done with the housekeeping, and we will start with the most interesting part, I hope, for you. We will start with our presentations, and for that, Sebastian, I will hand over to you to give us an update on the status flow.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me share my screen. So we presented actually the status flows last customer roundtable already as like a kind of a lab preview. We did a little bit more polishing around the edges, and now released it in our November release as a beta feature. It's now available, and I was want to quickly show what's changed a little bit here, and I'll definitely stay under the 10 minutes, hopefully, to keep enough time for the more newer announcements later on. So so we have following our X-Travels sample, where you can also see the flows in action later. I'm going to demo them, but you can also try them out yourselves in the repository. They're there as samples. You see that we can add basically this workflow to this travels entity with our flow status annotation on entity level, telling the machine, the generic handlers, which of the properties is actually the status. And then we have our entry and our entry states that we check generically, and the exit states that we set generically. Of course, keeping it open for any additional checks you want to do yourself, or for example, in this deduct discount action, there is no set state that we're going to set to, but you could also in the generic handler set, of course, to some state that you have to determine your coding because you have a non-deterministic state at the end, or at least or non-static from the flow, right? So we're keeping it open for you to add your custom logic. And what we additionally do to additionally to these generic handlers is that we generate the UI annotations. So you get the buttons on the UI. You get state-based enablement of these buttons. So you can only click those where the current add from state basically is valid. And there's going to be one feature you don't see in this snippet here, but I'm going to show you in the demo, is if you have a flow with a to-state to a previous state. So if that's this kind of unblock or back or whatever example, then we automatically also add data structures to track the state transition, so you can really rewind those basically. And so now I'm gonna directly switch to the demo. So again, you can check it out by yourself. It's on Xtravels. So in the github.com Campfire org. And here we have our travel service. You know this one. We have the travels entity, and it has a bunch of custom actions. So we have, you can accept a travel, reject it, or reopen one that was rejected, and then this deduct discount. And then because we are trying to follow this best practice of separation of concerns, next to the travel service CDS, we have this travel flow CDS, where we basically declare the flow in its own separate file via annotating this travels entity. And you can see this is now the first, let's say more simple example without the previous state. So we have accept and reject travel, and then we can reopen from either rejected or accepted. And I'll quickly run the server so we can look, check that in action. Let's see here. So let me increase a little bit. We'll take the first one that's open, right? And you can see, okay, we have the buttons up here generated automatically, so added by us. No custom annotations needed for those. And it's an open travel. I can accept it, and I can reopen it. And you see this travel status here changes, and you see the button enablement, right, guiding the user on what he or she is allowed to do in the current state. So that's kind of the basic one. And then there is, I'll go back to that window, sorry. In the Xtravels repository, there's also this examples folder. So flow is actually the first one we added here. And the idea is that you have the main application is like the kind of basic examples of some features, and then you can activate more extensive scenarios for individual features via the content of this examples folder. And here you see we now have a little bit bigger workflow shown in this diagram here, where we have a blocked state that we can reach from two different entry states, namely open and in review. And then I also want to be able to unblock the travel and return to the state that I was previously in, right? And that is done with this keyword $flow previous. And maybe here you can run it with just CDS watch again, but the profile flow. So what happens actually is that in the CDSRC, I just have for the profile flow, I say, please also consider the content of this folders, right? That's the magic behind how that works with the profiles. And if we look at it for a second before running it, you'll see a little bit more extensive flow modeling here, right? And then you have the different states. So we have to add some actions that were not there in the basic example. Then again, we have to annotate these actions with the from and to states. And you see that the unblock travel action will have the state flow previous. And then we have to also add some UI labels here, which were not in the basic example. So you get also the internationalization text on the buttons. So let's stop that one, and then we'll start CDS Watch with profile flow. Go back to the browser in here, right? So it will refresh automatically. Again, we have this vacation. It's again an open because we're doing CDS Watch. You know this, so it's always every time the fresh data from the database folder. So we are in status open. You see, we have now a few more buttons here, and I can go into review. Status is in review. Then I can block it, right? And if I unblock now, I will go back to in review because that was the previous state. And if I reopen, block and unblock, I'm back to open, right? And so what we have to do, of course, in order to go back to these previous states is record these transitions, and you get basically a technical data structure appended automatically to your entity or to the base entity that contains the flow. But we actually hide that data structure from any projection. So there's no, we don't increase the surface of the API of your service, but really it's a completely technical solution in order to keep track of the transition, so we can do switch to the previous state. Yeah, and with that, I'm already done with my demo and can hand over to Daniel for the declarative constraints.
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. I'm sharing my screen and starting with the slides. At the beginning. Yeah, so declarative constraints, you have seen this already in recap earliest this year. And yeah, we will release it now in December 25. And so starting with, if that is like the CAP playbook that you usually do when you do CAP application, you do the main model, you add your services, which are the interfaces to the outside world, and then you would add, and they are served generically, mostly, all the requests, but then you would add custom logic, for example, for input validation, and then also for handling actions, then status transition and status flows automate a lot of status management, as Sebastian just shared. And in addition, similarly, the new declarative constraints will cover whatever 70% of all your input validation in a declarative way, and thereby push back the need for custom logic even more. Yeah, with that, I would quickly show that in the X-Travel sample application. Yeah, you know, X-Travel is this exploit thing. Let me quickly start it again here. Yeah, where we see basically flight bookings or travel bookings. What we want to do is, when we edit such a travel, that we can have input validation on all relevant input. And before, you would have to write custom code, which we now push back by adding constraints, similar to, as Sebastian just introduced, there's our travels entity with all the travel data. Sebastian added this travels flow, and we add another secondary concern in a separation of concern fashion, where we can now add annotations to the elements of travels. So travels is this thing, which is this entity, which has these elements. And part of these elements are the bookings, and bookings have these elements. And this is what we want to input validate. back to the constraints. What you can do now is just add this assert annotation to the individual elements where you add expressions in these round parentheses. And in these expressions, you use these case when statements. This is a standard SQL case when expressions, where in here, these parts are the actual assert conditions, where you use pub expression language, which extends the SQL expression. And in the then parts, you just return error messages that should be raised. And what we can see, for example, quickly go through it, it can be using functions, SQL functions like length, or advanced functions like the exists operator to detect wrong foreign keys, and combined expressions like several when clauses, and also what we call path expressions with infix filters. This one says, and of course also compare the actual input, begin date is the input, with other elements on the same entity. And this one is the bookings composition, an association to many, which we filter by flight date of this booking being outside of the travel period, and then we detect this. Yeah, it goes on like that. That just creates an impression of what you can do. We see also here on the individual flight dates in the travel bookings list, we check again, is the date not between begin date and end date of the travel that this thing belongs to, then we give the same information. Let's quickly show how this looks like. If I did something here, like I leave the customer empty, I get this first error message of customer must be specified that we saw here, which means it's a custom message, not just a generic one, but you can use this also to have custom messages. Or if I enter a wrong name, then the other message, customer does not exist, kicks in. And goes on like that. I add a too short description. I have a end date before the begin date. It will immediately show up on the field that I edited. This is Fiori standard behavior. But when I save, all the fields are checked. Like it could also be that it's the wrong begin date. So begin date must be before end date after begin date, and the other checks on the individual fields kick in, which say, well, June 6th is outside of this travel period, and May 30 as well, because it might be that I did a mistake in this booking, so I get the indications. Yeah, overall, that's already it. We can go into the details when we roll it out, and to summarize the noteworthy things, the new assert annotation uses CDS expression language. We are still missing a deep dive on the expression language, which we also finalize and will be published January. We use the same expression language already today in calculated elements and other annotations like UI hidden or restrict. And what happens with these expressions is they are collected, the assert expressions, put into a database query and sent to the database. And this is a key thing. It's a push-down approach that CAP anyways has. Instead of reading a lot of data into memory of your service and then looping over the data to do the validations, we just capture the expressions and push down the validations to the database where the data is, which greatly reduces overhead. And it's following the CAP principle of what, not how. You tell us what should be checked, and we do the best possible way of executing it efficiently. Yeah, also supports extensibility because even your customers, when they add an extension field, for example, they can add these input validation constraints with the right error messages on that new fields without having to go into custom coding. On the limitations outlook side, you can also add constraints to base entities of your data model, which will be propagated to the service entities. But that is limited because you could refer to elements that on a view on top are missing. So it can be used, and we will share the details of what you have to take into consideration when using this option. We already have internally a way to have parameterized error messages. By the way, the error messages are so localized. You can use IATN keys instead of plain messages. And in addition, you can then later on will be able to do something like indicated here to fill in values in this error message, which might in turn be taken from associated entities. And we also plan to use the same approach of these dynamic or declarative constraints for field control to control visibility of a field on the UI, or when it is mandatory or read-only, etc. That's in the pipe. And with that, I'm done with my part as well and hand over to Steffen.
All right. Then I will share. Okay. So what I want to show or want to talk about today is a part of the big topic, data integration. Data integration, we mean sharing data between two apps. Of course, one of those usually should be a CAP app. If we talk about it, in this case, both of them are. This is a big topic, and I want to show you the first part of it that we can now, which we have released in the December release, which is about the CDS export. So what we have done is we took our S-Flight sample application and split that into two parts, X-Flights and X-Travels. Here I've linked the respective repo so you can have a look at them in detail afterwards. And the point of splitting it is that all the master data of S-Flight, like the list of flights, list of airports, list of airlines, and so on, went into the X-Flights app. So that has become a master data service. And the actual application where you can book travels, where you can book flights, went into the X-Travels. But of course, for X-Travels to work, it still needs access to the master data in the X-Flights app. And the question is now how you can do that. And the answer for that should be the data integration. Data integration kind of falls into two parts. One is about dealing or what a developer has to do. So the things you do in your model or in your code. And the second part is kind of the plumbing. So how you actually make the connection between the two applications so that the data can be shared. What I want to talk about today is about the first part of how to handle the metadata. So what you would do is now in X-Flights, you have the master data that should be available to X-Travels. How do you do that? You will have to define an API. You have to define your interface for the data as a part of or in a data provider service. I will show that in a minute in a demo. So you define a service which acts as an interface to your data. You export that interface. You can publish it, and then you can make use of that in the consuming application. So now switching over to the demo. So this is the, sorry, it didn't work. Now, so this is the X-Flights application. let's first have a look at the DB schema file, where you find all the entities we have here. We have the flights, we have flight connections, so you can see flights are split into, so are normalized. We have two entities, flights and flight connections, which together contain all the flight information. We have a list of airlines, airports, and so on. Now we want to define an interface so that you can get access to the data. We do that in a separate file called data services, and here we have defined, well, it's a regular CUP service with plain projections. So syntactically, nothing spectacular. So what we do here in the service, we expose the airlines as a projection, we expose airports, we expose the supplements entity, and we also expose a flights entity. This one is not a simple projection, but as I told you, we have in the X-Flights application, we have two entities that together contain the information. But for the API, we decided to share only one. So we make a denormalization and put all the information for the flights into one entity. Yeah, you can see here, we just used this association flight here and just folded in a way all the the elements from both entities into one entity. In this service, you will also find some events. So for the case that you want to share that a booking has been created or booking has been cancelled with the flights application, or otherwise the flight application can also share the information that it was updated. But today we will concentrate on the data part. Interestingly, we have now added this annotation data product that tells the CUP framework, well, this is a service which is intended to share data. We also have these annotations ASQL, REST, and OData, which of course control how this service here is provided to the outside world, with which protocols it can be accessed. Okay, now we want to make this model available to others, and that's now a thing that you so far was not really possible. So how would you do? If you want to consume this service here in another application, what can you do? Well, you can take the season of the whole application here, but of course that's way too much. In the past, you had to do the following trick. You had to kind of export this service as an EDMX, as an OData service, and then take this EDMX and import it in your consuming application. The drawback is, of course, you lose data, you lose information because, for example, on conditions of associations and other things are not captured in EDMX. And this problem is now solved by a CDS export. So you can just type CDS export and provide the name of the file. So we are in observe data service CDS. And the CDS export command will now create an API package, which is actually covering only the information you need to access this interface here. So we have a look, we have a new folder APIs, and here we have a new folder data service. In data service, you find a services season, which captures exactly that piece that makes up the interface. So these are only the entities you find in in this service. Everything, the rest of the model has just been stripped away because it's not needed for the interface. And also, if you look at the entities here, like flights or airlines, you will see, although it is a projection, here we see only the elements part. The query part is stripped away because that is completely irrelevant for the interface. So we capture only those part of the model that makes up the interface. In addition to the model part, we also have captured all the I18N texts. So these are basically a copy of the I18N translated texts of the application, but only that subset which is actually used in this API, in this interface. And you will find a data folder with some CSV files. And this is test data, which also exactly matches the entities. Where is it? The entities in your interface. Now, these entities or the CSV files are captured by locally starting a server and just making select on the entities in the service. So they exactly reflect the interface which is in particular interesting for this one, which is not just a simple projection on the basic entity as flight, but contains this association path and contains also some calculated elements. And finally, there is also a package JSON, which makes this folder here a complete NPM package, which can be shared and used. That means we have here just this the name. This name is made up of the name of the application and the name of the file, but you can adapt that one because this is a package that you might want to share. And now you can control, of course, the name, how you want that to be made known to others. Yeah, and that's basically everything you have to do in your providing application. Now you can switch over to the consuming application. And for that, I would just show here the X-Travels app. So what you would do now, you have this package, you can publish it, like for example with npm publish. And then if you have this package available in your consuming application, you just have to say npm add to consume the package. So then it's part of your application, it's part of your model. And then you can refer to it, like here, just say using from and then provide the name of that package. And now you have access to all the entities in the interface, and you would now define some consumption views on top of them, like here flights as projection on the external flights or for the supplements, where you also have the chance to, again, adapt this to your needs. So that means, for example, select only those elements of the package that you actually want to use. You have the chance to rename stuff that you don't like or where you find better names. And once you have done that, you can use those consumption views in your consuming application as if this were local. So as if the imported entities were local entities. You can immediately start this app locally. Then the imported package will just be mocked with the test data that we have provided, and you can immediately test whether this works the way you have expected it. Now, for the second part, so this was the model part. For the second part of doing the plumbing, of course, there we are working on ways to make this work out of the box. For example, by some service level data federation or via maybe even synonyms. If both of your microservices, both of your apps run on the same HANA instance, you could also use, or we will also make it possible to have synonyms to get access to the data. For the time being, you would do that in the Kalesi style. So you have imported a service, and now you can just write some custom code to fetch the data from X-Flights and get it into X-Travels. If you look in the X-Travels, you will find there's a little plugin that provides an example for a very simple method of the data federation, where you just at server startup make a call, make a query to the X-Flights and get all the data and cache it locally. But as I said, this is just an example. For this part, you can just provide custom code and do it all the way that you want to have it. Finally, one remark, we had a TechEd session, a hands-on session, which covers exactly what I have shown you today. So there's an exercise where you do exactly that. You define this data interface, you export it, and then you build your X-Travels app and import it so you can try it out yourselves. Just click the link, you should get to a repo that explains that. And with that, I would hand on to the next speaker. Unfortunately, I don't know who it is.
Yeah, Jennifer is the next
Exactly.
one. Exactly.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I will share some information on the new product in the CUP family, the CUP console. We started out with the task that the developer dashboard that is only available on the Java runtime should be available on all runtimes. We took some inspiration from OpenLens and made the developer dashboard a native app. And now our new mission is to make your overall experience of developing and deploying CAP applications better. So I will start off with the demo on the CAP console. Let me start sharing my screen. Okay, here we go. So this is CAP console, a native app running on my machine. As you can see on the dashboard, we list the projects that the CAP console is aware of. At the moment, it is the S-Flight Java application that was already saved into the CAP console. Let me go ahead and start another application. Just a second, let me bring up my terminal. So here I have a directory where I have the bookshop running, just like when you go through CAP Hire and get started with CAP. So the application has started. And as you can see, CAP console detects running CDS processes and adds these to your project list. No worries if you just want to test out something and to stop the application again. It's no longer there. It's just temporarily while it's running. But if this is actually a project that you're working on long term, then you might as well go ahead and save it to CAP console, and then it will be in your project list. Now, our main feature that I want to show off first is that we wanted to make it easier for you to deploy your applications to the BTP. So you can go ahead and click the Add Deployment button. The wizard will open to guide you through. If you're really new to BTP, you'll get some information here. If you're already familiar, just go ahead and log in. My CAP console is already set up to have a lot of information cached. For example, in preparation for the demo, I had already logged in previously, so my authentication token was cached in the app. The global account is preset by me, and the sub account is preset. So on this screen, the information is already filled in, and I can just go ahead and say, yeah, this app should be deployed to Cloud Foundry. Let us know if you want Kyma, and we'll prioritize it higher. At the moment, we are focusing on Cloud Foundry. Again, for the Cloud Foundry space, my authentication code was stored in CAP console, and also my preference for this org and the space was stored. But as you can see, you would have options like creating a new space if you want a clean start of this, which might be the case if you use this manual deployment instead of a CI/CD. So that's why it's there. Next up, we will help you with your BTP configuration. You might know one of the tasks you have to do for an application to have it running is that all the services that BTP services that are required, you need to assign entitlements from have it available in the global account and assign it to the sub account. So on the screen, the entitlement check is run, and my sub account was already pre-configured, so we can just get the green check mark. But if you do have entitlements available and need to transfer them to the sub account, you would have the option to assign them here, and CAP console would take care of that. And then we would already be ready to deploy. You can either go ahead and copy it to your terminal if that's the way you prefer, but we also do have the option to deploy it in CAP console. Since deployment takes a couple minutes, we're going to skip the step in the demo and just say finish like we did actually run it in the deployment in the terminal. So let's go ahead and check out the details page for our project. As you can see up here, we are checking in the local environment at the moment. Cup console detected the one service that's running. We do have the some nice links available, like visiting the UI, taking us directly to the application in our browser. And then for those of you who've used the developer dashboard in Java, we have a log viewer available. And this should show the logs. Let me check the, maybe something. Let me go back and start it again. So I'm so sorry, I have no idea what's going on at the moment. I'll check that out after the demo. So you would be able to see the logs here, and you would be able to access a simple log level switcher, which would switch the log level. For some reason, the app at the moment starts already with the debug log level, and I'll have to check that out. Sometimes if you prepare a demo, you prepare it too well, right? So where I want to show next is that you don't only have access to your local environment, you also have access to your Cloud Foundry environment, where I previously deployed the application. And as you can see, this area over here unblurred, we can now see the BTP services. I can click on the service to get access to some BTP features like stopping and restarting the app. We can see an extract from the deployment descriptor to see that, yeah, these are the BTP services in the descriptor that are required for the service to run. You get the utilization information that you have in the BTP. Obviously, you also get the link to BTP for the full picture if you need that. Go back. And you also have the same information available, the extract for just the BTP services. Yeah, that's what Cup Console can do for you at the moment. Let me go over to the presentation. You get the slides afterwards, as already said, so please go ahead, check it out, get started with the documentation on CapHire, on how to install it and how to enable the features in your application. And then you are very welcome to reach out to me and connect and shape the future of Cup Console. We offer deep dive sessions where you can give us feedback on how you use it and what new features would be a great addition to Cup Console. And we also offer in the deep dive session to show you upcoming features, give you a preview on what we've planned, and then you can give us feedback and shape it before it's out. And now I think I'm handing over to Simon, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. And then I give you some updates about the attachments plugin, and then right after for Kyma. Sorry for my bad voice. Got a cold just in time. So excuse me if my voice is breaking up. All right, attachments plugin. So the recent improvements that we've got to the attachments plugin is that we introduced translations for all UI labels, scan status, and error messages. So that means that all officially SAP supported languages are now officially also supported by the attachments plugin. Recently, you might have seen some German labels. This is now completely gone and now translated based on your browser's language. The next thing is that the attachments facet and section can be hidden through the Fiori Elements UI hidden annotation. This was in the past a attachments legacy-based annotation that was like custom made just for the attachments plugin. But since Fiori Elements has their own support for hiding elements, we now introduce the support for UI.hidden. That also has the support for dynamic visibility control. So basically, you can give some kind of condition. So case like a specific status must be matched, and then it will show up the attachment section. Another thing that we also introduced from the UI side is scans criticality status. So basically, as you can see here in the screenshot, your files that you upload to the attachment section will now have this like fancy colored status code, also including that icon. So basically, you instantly see if your file is clean and safely to use, or as in this case, malware. Another thing that we also introduced now recently is the media validation. So basically now you can specify which kind of media types are allowed and can be uploaded safely to your CAP application. So this can be annotated by the core acceptable media types, allows to set you like a specific array, a string array with MIME types that you can specify. And as equivalent to that one, we also now support the maximum file size specification and validation. So in this case, you can set up a specific file size, for example, 10 megabytes, and the CAP application will validate that and show an error message. Also, some enhancements to the, I would say, CAP backend. We now support for the CAP Node.js attachments plugin all hyperscalers. So AWS, which was previously supported, now with including Azure and GCP. Also, we deprecate the usage of the basic auth credentials used by the MTLS scanning service. So now, sorry for the malware scanning service. We now introduced authentication against that malware scanning service through MTLS. So in this case, you need to renew your credentials on the BTP side, and then it will use MTLS authentication against the malware scanning service. Also, which was kind of like an issue that was recently reported, was that we didn't support feature flag support. So that now also got supported as usual, how you would do that in a CAP application. Right, we come to a quick demo, and I just demonstrate you those UI improvements. Really quick here on the README side, you can read about the new changes that we did. So in this case, let me quickly jump to the right section. We can now specify the maximum file size. You can specify the acceptable media types. We'll do that really quick. I'll jump to my VS Code editor. So now in here, and we basically want to run this application. So I do CS watch profile hybrids. So we are connecting to real BTP services, in this case the malware scanning service and the object store. So if we reload our application, we see the incident application. We can see an attachment section over here. So first thing first that I mentioned is the UI hidden label. So basically we can now hide this attachment section here. I add this label here on the top and save the application real quick. And as you can see, magic, attachment disappeared. We continue with the maximum file size. So I removed that hidden label again and enter this annotation here. So basically we annotate our attachments entity here, our composition, and especially the content here with validation maximum. And in this case, just for demo purposes, 1 megabyte. I save and magic, the attachment section appeared again. I try to upload now a file. I have this 5 megabyte file, as you can see here, 5.2 megabytes. I try to upload this one, and we got a fancy error message. File size limit exceeded beyond 1 megabyte. So basically, that file was too big and got removed automatically. Right. And last but not least, the acceptable media types. So I entered this one annotation again on the content entity, this time core acceptable media types. So we only allow JPEG images to be uploaded. So if we jump back to our application, oops, let me reload the page. Oh, something wrong. Something is wrong. Let me restart it one more time. Demo as always. Okay. Something is really wrong. Let me quickly put this in brackets and at the semicolon. Might be my, yeah, there we go. Sorry, wrong copy paste. You see the attachment section again. I tried to upload a file, and as you can see here, everything is grayed out. Basically, now the browser only allows me to upload a JPEG file. Let's quickly change this to an application PDF. So I can upload this file. And you can see here, sample PDF is now being allowed. I can upload it, and there we go. You can also see the fancy scan status now. So that's, yeah, the recent updates on attachments. That being said, I'll quickly continue, and this is just a quick update on Kyma deployment. So our recent improvement to Kyma is basically that we introduced this command cds@kyma, which is now the central entry point for Kyma projects. In this case, we also started deprecation of the cds@containerize and Helm. Those will be removed in CDS10, so watch out and use the new cds@kyma command. Also, improvement is now the automated UI5 builds, so you don't have to do that manually anymore. With the cds-up command that we had in the past already, this is now fully automated. We also now support checksum calculation. So basically, we don't rebuild the Docker images over and over again. We detect if you have changes to your CAP project. If not, then we just use the latest version of the Docker image and use that for the deployment. And in case there's something changed, then we do the rebuild. Also, the dependency on the CDZ tool was removed, so this tool is no longer required and also got updated in the documentation. That being said, that's for Kyma. Hope this wasn't too fast. Just had to be quick before my voice leaves me.